Welcome to the Radical Responsibility Revolution podcast. This is where we are transforming lives, inspiring you to reclaim your health, your wealth, and the power of your mind. Here we share actionable insights, inviting you to turn inwards and design your life of purpose and abundance.
Welcome back to another episode of Radical Responsibility Revolution. And let me just say this, when someone starts talking about listening to your body, I'm already leaning in. Because if you've been anywhere near my world, you know that I believe the body is not the problem, it's the messenger. And today's guest, she doesn't just believe that, she's built an entire framework around it. Holly Niles is a licensed clinical nutritionist with deep roots in functional medicine. She's trained with some of the best in the field, worked with thousands of patients, and I mean thousands. And what she's uncovered is something I think every single woman needs to hear. Your body isn't broken. You just haven't been taught how to understand what it's saying. So, from being on her first diet at just 8 years old to working in integrative health, yoga therapy, and functional medicine, Holly has taken decades of experience and distilled it into what she calls the Body Wisdom Blueprint, a powerful three-phase process. So she's going to tell us about this. But here's what I love the most about Holly. She doesn't just talk science, she bridges science and energy, the nervous system and lived experience, the body and the story. So we're going to get into her story. But I want to welcome you, Holly, to this beautiful space that I know you are gracing us with because you have so much wisdom. And I love the idea that we're going to talk about the body. So welcome and welcome.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. We're definitely kindred spirits talking the same language. So that's always inspiring me to have an opportunity to discuss and deep dive these things like body wisdom. As women, it finally makes sense. So I'm delighted to be here today.
We want to make some sense out of this. And I want to start with this conversation about the body, about it not being broken, that it's actually communicating with us and it's the messenger. Give us a big 10,000-foot view of what that means for the everyday woman who is struggling with weight, chronic pain, diabetes, all the chronic stuff.
Yeah, so really where this concept came was because I worked with thousands of patients and I started to see this pattern where women were often saying like, I don't know what's happening. My body's over here. It's doing its own thing. I feel like we don't even talk. I don't know what the heck it's doing, but it seems like it's wrong. And I can't figure out where this disconnect came from. And so that really helped me say, well, let's look at this in a much more balanced way, combining the science of biology and the systems biology approach of functional medicine, which is looking at root causes, with some basic principles. The body's wise, the body knows how to heal. Everyone's had an experience where their family member was in a horrible accident, they're in ICU, and then a month later, they're driving their car, everything's good again. What was that? That is the body wisdom. So that really kind of started me thinking about this in a way that I felt just by changing perspective opened the door to healing. So if I can stop and be, okay, maybe my body's actually super smart. Maybe it's telling me these really wise messages and I just missed it. I'm mad at it instead of listening to it and understanding how to interpret what it's telling me. And as soon as we open that door, that's where the shift really begins to happen because the trick about the body, and this is sometimes where we get really frustrated, it doesn't give up on us. So if it's got a problem, it will tell you every single day. It doesn't say, you know what, girl, I've been talking to you for 3 months. You don't listen. We're going to move on. Nope. Every morning it says, I'm still unhappy. I'm still unhappy. And that is the wisdom. And so that really was the genesis to say, what is that pivot where we can say, wait, I have to figure out how to translate it. And I think that lens is really about a deep investigation, right? Really wanting to put the facts together. And when I've seen it happen hundreds of times, when the story gets connected and then people go, oh, that's why my body's doing this. I see this story. Oh, so wow, my body's actually really smart. It's doing what it should be doing to help me.
There's so much to unpack here. And the thing that you said that really struck me was we get mad at it as if it's not a part of us, number one. But I also use that in context, I personally, when I teach about abundance, because we do this thing with money as well. It's just about wealth and abundance, but we get mad at it, but we're in a relationship with it, just like we're in a relationship with our body. And if we were in a relationship with people, and we treated either one of those experiences like we do with people in bad relationships, they would leave us. Not that our body's going to leave us, because you just explained that it's always talking to us. But I think that's so important to understand that we're having a love affair with ourselves. And so how do you feel that that was your calling?
Well, thank you. I think really how you introduced me, I was put on my first diet when I was 8 years old. I shared that with you.
Mhm.
I can tell you the doctor's name. I can tell you what his shoes looked like. And at that moment, that's true. He wore orthopedic shoes that tied on the side. And I remember it was pivotal. I can see myself sitting up on the treatment table. He reached to his big desk in the bottom drawer and ripped off this diet. And so at 8 years old, my very loving, well meaning parents thought this was the thing to do. In a way, I got a message like, you're messed up, like you have a problem, right? At eight
Right.
years old. So I personally became pretty obsessed with food. We could have a good laugh about all the diets I was on, right? Trying to fix this. That wasn't really true from a functional medicine standpoint. What had happened to me was they'd given me dairy as a baby, which I projectile vomited because my body didn't want it. That led to zillions of allergy. So I think my own journey of my own health and finally transforming, like, wait a minute, what's happening here? What is really true about my body? Maybe I don't have a bad body. Maybe it's not broken. Maybe it's not a problem. I think that really started me on my own path. And I know exactly what that personal experience is, particularly around weight, because that's a big button for a lot of females. And I think that piece, of course, balanced with a lot of spiritual journey that I was on, doing yoga therapy, yoga training, and started to tap in the style of yoga that I'm trained in is called Kripalu yoga. And without going down a big rabbit hole, it combines both the tantric and the Vedantic path of yoga, which is two paths that are married. So tantric yoga, most people think of as more, sexual energy, but tantric
Right.
yoga really says I'm perfection as I am. The Vedantic path says, I'm going to get up every morning, get on that mat because I want to evolve. So that synergy of I'm perfect as I am and I'm wanting to evolve and expand transformed me because it gave me both. I didn't have to be an either or. I didn't have to hate myself or go, oh, forget it. I'll just do whatever I want. It gave me the opportunity to really hold two opposites. And I think that was a pivotal turning point to say, oh, wow, there's place for love. I can be in love here and want to help improve, expand, elevate my body, mind at the same time. And what do I eat for breakfast? And then we have the psycho spiritual emotional. Why am I here? What's my divine plan, blueprint? Who am I? What makes me unique? What is that divine inspiration? And my experiences, when we combine those, just like my experience in yoga, that is a path of transformation because we do have to pay attention to what we eat for breakfast. That's practical. But when we have a higher view of our body, sometimes that practical is easier to embrace, right? Because I've got a vision, a bigger sense of myself.
I think that is probably, I just had one of these aha moments as you're sharing that, because I think I shared this on the pre-call with you as well, that I was, when I was 8, I was, somebody told me I was fat, and I'm like, oh, I look at pictures and go, who are they talking about? And I couldn't even tell you who that was, but yet it downloads something in that, in your soul, that says you're not good enough, just like you were explaining. and of self-fulfilling prophecy for parts of my life when I can, because I was looking at pictures recently about the 90s and I went, okay, I lived into that fatness. There's been other times when I wasn't, but there's this point, and you stated it so eloquently, that when we are looking at ourselves and you're looking at that beautiful body that carries you around in the world and you're not loving on her. And what you said was evolve and expand at the same time that I'm perfect. Because I've always taught that we're perfect, divine, and whole just as we are. And then you look in the mirror and you go, not so much. But this idea of evolving and expanding, it's so much more expansive. I love that terminology because it gives you permission to not say I need to be a better version of myself. I'm just evolving, which is what we do on the planet, and we expand. That's what life is. So I really want to thank you for that. That was a beautiful, beautiful share, and I'll have to certainly check out tantric and the other yoga. I love the idea of your program about investigating and the other components. So we're going to talk about those right now. But the first component, and you can share the steps, but the first one I love so much is investigate, because we aren't doing that. As human beings, we're not investigating our world. We're not being curious. We're just getting up every day, doing the same stuff every day. Same shit, different day is what I say. So how did you come up with this program?
I have to give credit to functional medicine. Dr. Jeffrey Bland, who's the father of functional medicine, started with this idea of systems biology, the idea of looking at a root cause. So often in a conventional setting, people will have a frustration that they come in, they've got their 10 minutes. It's like, you have this is what we do, check, off we go. And functional medicine really says we need to personalize. Everyone's different. You may have 5 patients who have reports of blood sugar issues. Maybe they all have type 2 diabetes, and I will tell you all 5 will be different. So the investigate piece, I think, really comes, I sometimes joke that I practice CSI nutrition, right? I'm always at a crime scene. I'm gathering the crime scene facts, right? When I'm talking to a patient, like, how did we get here? And so it's really, I think, the idea is to understand these pieces. So in functional medicine, we call it a timeline. We speak of things like antecedents, triggers, what were these triggering events, which often people will say, oh, I was going along and then at 18 or something, my father died, I lost my job. There'll be these events where they'll say, and after that, I didn't feel well, or after that, it seemed like things unfolded. And so the investigate piece takes in, of course, those basics, like what is your health history, your personal history, your family history. But what I've also added to it is doing an assessment through a training I've had called Food and Spirit, which uses the energy centers. Some people refer them as the chakras. And you do an evaluation of that part of you, that investigation, right? So what in that area? So it's like an energetic evaluation. Then we also do a body map where we have you kind of really draw out like where are places in your body where it might feel great, tight, pain, so that we start to get this almost somatic piece. So the idea is that we're gathering as much specific personal data as possible to set this framework up, which of course launches us into our next phase. So once we've got the story, often, as I said, people will, when we put the pieces together, we're like, oh, you had antibiotics pretty much every month for for 5 years of your life, or your mom was certainly not able to be home with you and you just were free in the cupboards and were just eating junk all the time, or you had a scenario where you didn't sleep. There's all these fragments. I could list hundreds of them that when you cull them together, I always speak of a tapestry. We're taking all your threads into your tapestry to say, here's where we're at. And it has the twofold process because we want the facts, but that's where we first tap into the wisdom piece. And that, as I say, is usually transformative, because when we are mad at our body because it's not doing what it's doing, it's very hard to move forward. It feels very stuck. I don't have control over it. That's a vibe. So if we get really good data on all levels, that helps us move into what we call the activation stage, right? That's our next step to say, what are we going to do about that now? Now that we've got this comprehensive data, how would we support this body?
And then to not listen to it because you're mad at it. It's just so incredible. And we have so much chronic disease running around like chickens with their heads cut off, going, what to do about this? When the answer is here. A quick story. My mom's in a senior center. The woman's going through dialysis. She says, I went to my appointment and the guy said, I think you need a flu shot. She's like, okay, well, I think you need a tuberculosis shot. And I looked at her with this like gobsmacked look on my face and hoping she was going to say, I don't need it. And she says, well, if you think I need it, okay. But that's the world that we're living in. So I want to take a moment for you to share with women that are listening to this about how to empower yourself to take responsibility, since the podcast is radical responsibility, for your own body, not to keep giving away our agency.
It's really like a brilliant point and certainly well taken. One of the real challenges, if you're kind of mad at your body, you're not really listening to it, you don't really feel it's wise, you feel like it's left you, I think that leads you into being open to some other person coming and go, well, let's just do this. And you're like, okay. But I often, when I have conversations with patients, they'll say to me, it just didn't feel right to me. I really didn't, some part of me was, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if that's right. So because I know a lot of your focus is about intuition. So I think like take that moment to pause, and it's okay to question your doctor. It's very simple to say, is there another choice? Could I choose another option? Do you have any other suggestions? I'd like to think about that medication. I'd like to do some research. I think that's certainly an entry point. The reason we get into these loops with chronic disease is because we're doing this your computer is broken, the software isn't working, and you bring in one of those little vacuums that you vacuum the keyboard. How the heck's that going to help, right? Like what? And that's what happens. So we treat the body very mechanically, like you have a blood sugar issue. The only thing we could do is give you a medication for blood sugar. So that's very surface. Who is that person, right? So what is their life like? And so I think that's where we get stuck. So we have this one size fits all, but we know what happens next. That medication will create a new problem that another medication will solve, which creates another problem. And that's where we get into this triad, particularly with chronic disease. There's a trio that happens a lot. Hyperlipidemia, right? So high cholesterol, high lipids, hyperglycemia, blood sugar issues, or hypertension, blood pressure. What will get you to one will get you to all of them. So if you do not change the behavior and you medicate one, you will likely get to the other two. Now you're in some hot water, right? Now you're in a multiple chronic disease scenario, multiple medications. Now, let me say for the record, of course, it's a miracle that we have pharmaceuticals and they can save your life. So we never throw the baby out with the bathwater, right. But that's where it falls short for a lot of people. It doesn't solve the problem. It just temporarily improves the lab or takes some of the symptoms away. But we have really surfaced the body. We did not go to the roots. We didn't figure out, and that's where we get into that space. So I think you have to be a little fierce. You have to be willing to change doctors, right? I always say I spend time coaching patients how to talk to their doctors, what to expect, what to ask for, because of that very thing. It's okay to go to a new doctor. If you are voicing concerns and they give you pushback, you feel like you're being gaslit, move on. This is your body, the house you live in. It's yours. It's nobody else's. So you want to take care of it in a way that feels like you have agency and empowerment. Now, here's the hook of this, though. To be living in your body, to be embracing changes, to look at your body holistically, it's really a soul task, because now I have to move to the front of the room. I have to do something different on Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday morning. I have to show up for my body. Not everybody's ready to do that. So that is the payoff. So being willing to say, I'll do what it takes. I'll stop eating X. I'll get to bed at a certain time. I'm going to honor the house I live in, because I think if I think of myself as a young woman in my dieting mode, didn't live below my neck. You want to be in a relationship with your body that, yes, it's the house you live in, but you want to check, would the rest of the body vote yes on that? Probably not in most cases. So it's this idea of understanding what happens when I swallow food. What's that journey? Because there are no side exits, right? Once you swallow, there's no way to get it out. So your body has to take the hit. So you eating a bag of Doritos, that's a good example. It's going to take the whole journey through, and it's going to be messy because there's no nutrients. It's just inflammatory calories, right? So when you do that, you kind of get to that. So I think there's the practical piece of being empowered at your doctor to ask more. And then there's having that moment where you're like, willing to step up and do something different, make a change to help my body come back into balance. And that's, of course, the activation phase, right?
Designed to heal themselves. Resilient, that we have, I think, deluded ourselves into that whole notion that whatever I put in there, it's a-okay because society has told us it is, the marketers and everybody. And then one day we wake up and we're in pain, or our joints aren't working, or we're having a diabetic episode. And so I find it so interesting that we can literally abusing ourselves for long periods of time before the body says no more. And my brother sold what was called healthy chocolate. It's pure cacao. And it was so invigorating. And they stopped making it because people were not interested in taking or having long term health results from that sort of thing. They would rather go to the doctor. So, based on your experience in this industry for so long, what do you attribute that to? This desire that we want an easy fix as opposed to,
Well, that's a deep subject, right? I think one is our medical culture says, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. Now I've fallen off the cliff and I'm sick, because that's how we look for pathology, right? When we do labs, we're looking for imbalance. I had a patient who came to me, he said, well, I have type 2 diabetes. She said, we've been watching my blood sugar for about 3 years and now I have diabetes. And I was like, what does that mean? You've been watching it? They've been watching it go up? I don't understand. As soon as there was a problem, when you have just said, hey, let's turn that boat around. So that is the challenge. It's either you got it or you don't. It's very black and white. Functional medicine looks at it completely differently. We're looking upstream. We're looking at labs that are not traditionally ordered to try to see, is there a little crink in the road, a small one that we could just correct and we're never going to get to the diagnosis. That's how we think of optimal, right? So we have this very clear, I see a ton of patients with GI issues. This is a perfect example. So GI issues, laxatives alone over the counter is something like $2 billion a year. Just laxatives, not other digestive support. So we have a lot of digestive issues. When you go to a GI doc, you'll get a colonoscopy and endoscopy, and they'll say, nothing's wrong. But the patient will come to me and go, I feel terrible. I'm bloaty. I don't digest my food, my bowels, but because we can't name it, because it's not that pathology. So I do think that's a very insidious psychology. That's how we think in our medical world. We wait until we have a thing, right? And so that idea is then when we have a thing, whatever the diagnosis is, we're kind of used to that. Oh, I'll just take a pill and it'll get better. We're not thinking preventatively. We're not thinking upstream. So I think that's a big piece. Listen, we have a lot of very persuasive food messages out there that, getting back to, it's a soul task. So typically what happens is there'll be a tipping point, right? Somebody will have had it, right? They've gone to 3 doctors. They just feel horrible. Nothing's wrong from a pathology standpoint, but they feel horrible. That's often what will turn someone around to say, okay, I'm ready. I'll do what it takes because I can't live my life this way. But I do think our culture is a little bit easy, quick, going for that pill. But of course, there are downsides to that in terms of lots of damage can be done before you have a frankly diagnosed disease. And that's why we see this cascade of chronic disease that once the boat tips over, it's sort of like a flood comes in. And I'm sure you've seen that with friends or family members where it seemed like they were fine. And then boom, something happens. And then it's like we've unleashed all of this. Well, they weren't fine. If we really looked under the hood, they had a lot of imbalances already, because getting back to what we talk about, body usually talks, but we do things to shut those symptoms down, right? Like the chronic pain, we go, oh, I'll just take a Tylenol or some sort of NSAID, or I have stomach issues, I just reach for an over the counter, shut it down, shut it down. And I think that's where we miss the mark right there. We're shutting it up. We're shutting the body up instead of saying, maybe I want to look at this. Why? What is it trying to tell me? And is there something I could do so that I could turn it around and rebalance it?
I wish we could have that mantra out there in the world, that when your body is talking to you like that, to listen, because that is one of the biggest keys, is that we're just shutting it down. And
Correct.
literally, it's from a headache to heartburn to whatever. And I already knew that gastrointestinal was already a problem in at least our Western culture. I was diagnosed with rectal cancer in 2017, and I've had GI issues my whole life. To hear that one of the highest selling items is laxatives, I am gobsmacked. Our food is killing us. Do you agree?
Yes, I would agree. The thing about bowel movements, which we talk about all the time in functional medicine, you'd be very surprised to learn very few doctors talk about bowel movements, even GI doctors. Very surprising when I first started to practice. Things like, oh, I only go every 3 days. Oh, that's your normal. These are things I've heard. So here's
Mhm.
how, if we think of how the body systems flow, the body never likes stagnation. We know in our cardiovascular system, if we get stagnation, a block, we have a heart attack, right? We have a stroke.
Mhm.
The GI system is the same thing. So what happens in your gut, I always say your gut is not a storage unit. It's a train depot. We're supposed to have stops and we keep going. And as soon as you become a person with chronic constipation, you have a really huge gut problem. That is like a big flashing red light from your body. We have big problems because our immune system, about 72%, lives in that gut. So now I'm opening myself up to a myriad of problems: inflammation, gut permeability, and fermentation, reabsorbing toxins. That is a problem. And it's really one of the first things I always address with folks. We got to get those bowels moving. You've got to clear that out, because that tells us something stepping on the hose of your digestion. There's no way you can be feeling well, doing well, etc. So I think that piece of the story is really the root right there. As soon as you have, or if you have the opposite problem, like, oh yeah, I'm running to the bathroom, 3, 4,
Mhm.
same thing, because really a loose stool is just a different form of constipation. Normal bowel movement, when anyone has a normal bowel movement, here's what you notice, and nobody talks about this. You actually feel a little euphoric. Nobody says it out loud, but when you have a good bowel movement where you feel like you've emptied your bowel, you look in your toilet and you think, hey, wow, I've really released. because the nervous tissue in your gut, so it's a nervous system center. So when you clean it out and it's all neutral, you're going to feel great. But when it's stuck, you're going to have more problems. So how do we get constipated? Over processed food, no fiber, no water, late eating, fast eating. It's, again, the software of the body has no program for a McDonald's hamburger. Maybe a little bit of the meat, but it doesn't know what to do with that, right? It's not really nutritious, it's calories. And so when you have, I always call them gluggy foods that glug up. Because if you take like a bun, we'll use that as an example from McDonald's, you can kind of like make it into a big gummy ball, right?
Yeah.
So that's what's happening in your gut. Sticky, it's heavy, it's tacky, versus you're having a big salad that's got all these vegetables in it, a piece of fish. That's streamlined. There's software. Your body has software for all of that. As soon as that salad comes in, it's a happy day moment, right? Because your body's saying, great, I know what to do with all of this. This is all usable. When we bring in the garbage, everything gets slowed down. You slow down, your gut slows down, your energy drops because you're not bringing in fuel. The foods that we have, I'm going to use that word loosely, is a huge factor, really a root of many of our chronic diseases, many of our problems, our sleep issues, the GI issues. And again, we find a cascade will happen, right? Once we get out of balance in one area, we have what we call systems biology. Everything's connected. So I think the food is a huge factor. Huge.
Yeah. So we've talked about how stress is a factor. I'm still surprised that people don't realize that stress, chronic stress, live in hypertensive stress and food. So let's talk about trauma. People, I don't think give this any thought whatsoever because a lot of people don't even know they're in trauma or have had trauma. So share a little bit about your experience with trauma in the body. Trauma comes in, it's a spectrum. There's so many different versions of it.
Yes, and I've done a lot of study. There's a whole body of work, a limbic system retraining work. So we have several programs. DNRS was the OG with Annie Hopper. Now we have the Gupta program by Ashok Gupta. There's something called Primal, I'll think of it, Kat, Dr. Kat, is it? She's another program. So what I've learned is that trauma is any intense emotional event that you did not have the ability to handle or process. We tend to think of trauma, in these very, horrific kinds of experiences, sexual abuse, but trauma takes quite a spectrum. The body keeps score. So trauma comes into the body, and what it starts to do is activate that sympathetic nervous system in a way. So if we talk briefly about that, most people kind of know sympathetic, it's that fight, flight, and then we have the parasympathetic, we call that rest and digest. So sympathetic is the thing that keeps you alive. So you're being chased by a wolf, it's brilliant. Your body liberates glucose, drives it into your muscles, you get some cortisol to really run. It's a brilliant system to keep you alive. But it has a very short resume, the sympathetic nervous system. That was it. I just gave you its whole resume, keep you alive. It's a parasympathetic that has all the skills: repair, digestion, sleep, detox, all of the things that keep us well. So when we're in sympathetic overdrive, as you just highlighted, and trauma, of course, the thing about trauma that's quite unique is trauma has no timeline. So I've talked to 70-year-old people who will tell me a story of their 16-year-old self, and it's like it's now. There's no time in trauma. So unless that gets healed. So what happens is the nervous system starts saying, you know what? Nothing seems too safe around here. I'm just going to be on guard all the time. Two things happen. We drive cortisol, lots of inflammation, but what can also happen is in its attempt to protect you, we get this limbic system, this brain rewiring where we start to get physical symptoms from the overprotective nervous system that don't track on a lab. So patients will, I have this pain and this pain. They get labs done, you're fine. So they think it's in my head, right? I'm making it up.
Right.
You're not making it up. The nerve, that was so profound to me to learn that. So that nervous
Mhm.
system, it's like it becomes so vigilant that it starts to elicit, just it drives this inflammatory response all the time because it thinks it has to. And you have to rewire that to let it know it's okay. We're safe now. So that's huge when someone tells a story, the way they tell it, when I'm in my investigate phase in my one on one, where I'll be like, that's a trauma. That, what also happens is, let's say it happened to you when you were 8 or 10 or 12, then that 12-year-old starts running the 50-year-old's life because it's stuck, right? We're stuck. I got to protect myself. I got to protect myself. So it's such a rich area. There's great resources. But again, that really takes in the whole concept of why we have to investigate so well, right?
Right.
To really get the value or the impact of these things. Because some people don't even realize, they think they put it out of their mind. They don't realize it's driving their fibromyalgia or their chronic
Yeah.
inflammation. And the statistics on that are pretty overwhelming. So there's great statistics showing. Dr. Sarah Godfrey wrote a book called The Autoimmune Cure, where she did analysis of what we call ACEs scores. So these are early childhood event score, and direct correlation between high scores and incident of autoimmune disease. So early
Wow.
childhood trauma predisposes you to autoimmune disease. So we have to consider that in our whole story. So yeah, it's a huge area.
Oh my gosh, my head is just about to explode because there's so much good stuff. So I'm going to ask you if you'd be willing to come back in a few months because I just think there's so much more to talk about. So, talk about your program, how people can become involved, what you have to share with us. Everything's going to be in the show notes.
So the body wisdom blueprint is the culmination of all of what we've talked about. So we have our investigate phase, the activate phase, a simple question: what do I need more of? What do I need less of? We use the wisdom to make that distinction. From there, we then move to the elevate, which I think is really the most important part, which is like living fully alive and abundantly, right? Not, I'm on a diet, I'm going to try this for 5 weeks, but what is that wisdom that tells us this is how I live now? This is how I take care of the house that I live in. There's no going back, or I just have to hang in there for a few months. And that's the piece that I found was really important, whether we're talking about gut healing, whatever. We can't underestimate the body and be like, oh, we did it for like a month. It should be fine now. No, the body, I always say the body is really old school. It's like, pick up a telephone, mail a letter. It's very 1978. There's no fast track download for the body. It likes to do things slow and steady. And when you do that, it's magical because healing will just layer and layer and layer. So that's the construct. So it's a 12-week program. We do a deep dive into all of those. We have weekly meetings, there's community connection. We have all kinds of great tools to evaluate, to track, to support. I've secured some really exciting guest speakers to talk about some of these other adjunctive supports or ways to look at the body. And it's really designed to, the premise is like, I'm kind of tired of feeling like I got this broken body. How can I take agency? How can I feel empowered? How can I show up for myself in this really big way that I'm worth it? To look, who am I? What is this unique blueprint? And how can I take that to really live a good life, an empowered life where you're really in your fullest, right? What is your fullest expression of being alive? So that's really the concept of the program.
Yeah. Well, it's brilliant. And I just think if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, if you're listening to this podcast, you really definitely need to check this out. I've been on a up and down health journey my whole life. And as I said, it culminated in 2017 with rectal cancer. And they took my rectum away and I'm still thriving because I got on a different train. This is so important for us to really look inside of our body. And the one thing that you shared in our conversation was about that story. I think that's so key. You touched on it a little bit, but just to really dive into what makes who we are today who we are, because that's that investigate part. And that is going to be really key in this program. You have such great wisdom, and I am so blessed that you graced us today with your presence. The program is ongoing, or it starts in May?
It's actually going to start June 1st. Then it'll be run again in the fall. So we'll be running them more frequently.
I think it's important. I really think it is so important in this world that we live in today, because if we don't have our health, what do we have? So, so one last thing I want to ask you. It's 2026, and I want you to just tap into your wisdom and your intuition, and listen to what it is that you want to share with women in 2026. What is the first thing that they should do to even get on this path? Because really, I talked about many different things, and somebody might be saying, oh, it kind of sounds like me, maybe not. What is one thing that you want to share that's going to leave them with this juiciness of, I need to do something different today?
Well, I often take people through a very simple exercise. I think this is a great one to start practicing to learn to be that listener, to be able to learn. So it's really 3 steps. So you start first with like a premise, a phrase, a truth, like, I know my body can heal. I know my body's wise. You have to choose your own phrase. So when you say the phrase, you're like, yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Then you take some time to breathe. You could put your hand on your heart. I like to put hand on the heart and belly and just listen, like, what is my body saying right now? No editing. It might be like, my right shoulder hurts. Why did I sit for 3 hours? Just start listening and maybe tune in. Is there some part of my body that's really talking right now? Is there a heat? Is there vibration? And then take the moment to maybe begin to interpret that, to listen, like, I wonder why that is. What's happening there? I wonder if there's a message there for me that can kind of begin to connect. And it's like developing a skill, right? So when we feel like everything feels crazy or we're really stressed, stopping with that path. So we open up the channel. When we take a breath, when we do our breathing, we shift into parasympathetic tone. So that's where the wisdom is, right? That's where healing is, in that place. So that's, I think, a really easy way to start to connect, because here's the secret I'll share with you. Everyone can do this.
Yeah.
Everyone has that wisdom. Everyone has that intuition. I don't care where you came from, what your story is, it's there. And women are very powerful to access, and we just need to practice it. So that's, I think, a great way to launch, to just get that little window, that little voice that will tell you, oh, she's right. Holly was right. I think there is more to this that can really set me on a path. And that may give you, whether you decide to take the program or you just decide to make a change for yourself.
Right.
I think that's a beautiful place to start.
Yeah. What a great note to end on. I'm just once again so grateful for you and for what you're doing, and you're doing God's work. You are healing the planet literally one soul at a time. And so my vision is just being held for you in that greatness, because you are an amazing individual. So thank you again, Holly, for sharing your day with us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be